The vast majority of households operate under an illusion of readiness. A handful of canned goods collecting dust behind the cereal boxes, a forgotten bag of lentils shoved into a corner shelf, maybe a case of bottled water somewhere in the garage that has been sitting there since the last hurricane warning that never materialized. People look at these things and tell themselves they are covered. They are not. If a genuine crisis unfolded within the next 48 hours, a catastrophic storm system, prolonged infrastructure failure, a fractured supply chain that takes weeks to repair, most families would open their pantry and confront an uncomfortable realization. The problem was never about having food. The problem was always about having the wrong food, stored improperly, with no coherent strategy behind any of it. What follows are 12 specific foods that belong in every serious emergency reserve. None of these were selected casually. Every single entry earned its position through a combination of verified shelf longevity, defined nutritional function, and proven real-world utility under adverse conditions. Pay particular attention to the final entry. It is not merely the most economical item on this list. It is the single foundational ingredient that binds every other item together into a functioning system. And it is the same cornerstone that institutional disaster response programs across the globe have relied upon for decades. Number 12. Honey, the common perception of honey as a basic sweetener. Something decorative sitting beside the sugar bowl, pulled out occasionally for tea, fundamentally underestimates what this substance actually is. For the purposes of emergency preparedness, that casual categorization needs to be abandoned entirely. Consider the economic trajectory first. Over the past several years, domestic honey production in the United States has been in measurable decline. Colony collapse, shifting climate patterns, habitat degradation, and a shrinking population of commercial pollinators have collectively driven wholesale and retail honey prices sharply upward. But cost fluctuations, however notable, represent only the surface concern. The far more consequential attribute of honey lies in its biological permanence. Research teams examining sealed burial chambers in Egypt's ancient tombs recovered containers of honey estimated at over 3 millennia in age. Laboratory analysis confirmed that the substance remained chemically stable and free of microbial contamination. This is not mythology or folklore. It is a verified, reproducible scientific observation rooted in honey's unique physical composition. The extremely low water activity, combined with a concentrated natural sugar matrix in a mildly acidic pH environment, renders honey inhospitable to virtually all bacteria, mold spores, and decomposition organisms. When stored in airtight containers away from excessive heat and ultraviolet exposure, pure honey carries no meaningful expiration threshold. From a physiological standpoint, honey delivers rapidly absorbable simple carbohydrates, the kind of immediate energy the body prioritizes during periods of sleep deprivation, physical exertion, or caloric deficit. No heating, no preparation, no secondary ingredients required. Consume it directly, dissolve it in warm water, fold it into cooked grains. Or pair it with a fat-dense food like peanut butter to construct a calorie-rich meal in under a minute. Beyond raw energy delivery, honey possesses documented antimicrobial properties that have been utilized in clinical wound management settings, and it provides legitimate symptomatic relief for throat irritation and mild respiratory discomfort without requiring any pharmaceutical supplement. Purchase exclusively raw or certified 100% pure varieties. Blended products diluted with high fructose corn syrup or other fillers sacrifice both the indefinite storage characteristics and the natural bioactive properties that make honey worth stocking in the first place. One critical note that prevents unnecessary waste: after prolonged storage, honey frequently crystallizes, turning opaque and solid. This is not spoilage, it is granulation, a perfectly natural physical process that occurs in high-purity honey. Submerge the sealed container in warm water for several minutes, and the crystalline structure dissolves completely, restoring the original liquid consistency with zero degradation and quality. Number 11. Canned tomatoes. There is a failure mode in emergency food planning that almost nobody discusses during the accumulation phase, yet it quietly sabotages even well-constructed reserves once they are actually relied upon. The failure is not caloric insufficiency, it is psychological collapse at the dinner table. When daily nutrition contracts to the same monotonous cycle, plain rice, unseasoned beans, unadorned canned protein, repeated without variation for days stretching into weeks, a documented behavioral phenomenon takes hold. Researchers studying prolonged dietary restriction under emergency conditions refer to it as appetite fatigue. This is not a loss of hunger. Hunger persists. What erodes is the willingness to eat. The repetitive sensory experience of identical meals generates a measurable psychological resistance that causes people to consume less than their caloric requirements, even when adequate food remains physically available. Nutritional intake drops not because the supply ran out, but because the human mind refused to cooperate with the supply it was given. A single can of tomatoes disrupts that cycle with remarkable efficiency. The sharp acidity, the moisture, and the concentrated flavor profile transform bland staples into recognizably different preparations. Dry beans become a rich stew. Plain rice absorbs the sauce and becomes a legitimate dish. Pasta gains a coating that makes it feel like a proper meal rather than a survival ration. One can, combined with whatever starch or protein is available, generates dozens of meaningfully distinct meal variations without requiring specialized seasonings, advanced technique, or additional fresh ingredients. From a nutritional perspective, canned tomatoes deliver lycopene, a potent antioxidant that the body actually absorbs more efficiently from heat-processed tomatoes than from raw ones. Alongside appreciable amounts of vitamin C and trace minerals that become genuinely difficult to obtain once fresh produce has been inaccessible for an extended period. A standard 14-ounce can cost between $1 and $2 and maintains reliable quality for 18 to 24 months, frequently longer when cans remain undamaged and storage temperatures stay consistent. Because tomato products carry high acidity, active rotation discipline is essential. Implement a strict first-in, first-out protocol. Discard any cans exhibiting significant denting, distortion, bulging, or evidence of seal compromise without hesitation. In a compressed food supply operating under real constraints, flavor is not a luxury. It is the mechanism that keeps the system psychologically sustainable over time. If you are finding this content valuable, take 1 second to hit the like button and drop a comment below telling me which item has surprised you the most so far. That small action makes a measurable difference in whether this reaches other people who need it. Number 10. Peanut butter. Imagine a scenario that millions of families have already experienced at least once. An extended power failure, no functioning stove, no microwave, no way to generate heat for cooking. Night is approaching. Children are hungry. Adults need sustained energy to manage the situation through the dark hours ahead. Peanut butter requires absolutely nothing. No heat source, no water, no utensils, no preparation time, no cleanup. Open the jar and calories are immediately accessible. A standard container provides a dense combination of protein, monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, and a high caloric yield per serving. That macronutrient profile, particularly the protein-fat pairing, generates sustained satiety that carbohydrates alone cannot replicate. There is no rapid blood sugar spike followed by a crash. There is no hollow hunger returning within the hour. For households with young children, peanut butter carries an additional dimension that deserves explicit acknowledgement: familiarity. During a disorienting, frightening situation where normal routines have collapsed, a recognizable taste provides genuine psychological comfort. That is not a trivial benefit. The pairing versatility is exceptional. Spread across flatbread, blended into oatmeal, combined with honey for a high-density energy meal assembled in seconds. At roughly $4 to $8 per jar, peanut butter delivers one of the lowest per-calorie costs available in any standard grocery aisle. One purchasing distinction carries real consequences for storage planning. Natural and organic peanut butters, which contain fewer emulsifiers and stabilizing agents, exhibit faster oil separation and shorter post-opening shelf stability. For reserves intended to sit undisturbed for extended periods, conventional commercial formulations with hydrogenated stabilizers represent the significantly more reliable choice. Most sealed jars maintain acceptable quality for 18 to 24 months under cool, dry conditions. Number 9. Canned beans. When people begin assembling protein reserves, the default instinct gravitates toward animal sources. More canned chicken. Additional tuna. Spam. Those items carry legitimate value and they appear further along in this list. But the protein source that features most consistently in professionally constructed long-duration food systems is not animal-derived. It is legumes. Canned black beans, kidney beans, pinto beans, chickpeas, and navy beans arrive fully cooked and immediately edible. No overnight soaking, no multi-hour simmering, no significant water expenditure or sustained fuel consumption. A single can, priced between 80 cents and $1.50, delivers protein, dietary fiber, iron, potassium, folate, and complex carbohydrates in a single serving. The fiber content alone addresses a critical gap. It sustains digestive regularity and promotes prolonged satiety during periods when meal frequency and overall volume have both been sharply reduced. Iron supports oxygen transport and baseline energy metabolism. Folate is fundamental to cellular division and repair. The operational advantage over dried beans under crisis conditions cannot be overstated. Dried legumes demand substantial quantities of clean water for soaking, extended cooking times over sustained heat, and additional fuel expenditure that may be in critically short supply. Those requirements transform dried beans from a convenience into a logistical burden when resources are constrained. Canned beans eliminate every one of those dependencies. Open the container, and the food is ready. Even the aquafaba, the liquid surrounding the beans that most people instinctively drain away, carries nutritional value and can be incorporated directly into soups, stews, or grain-based dishes. Nothing is wasted. Store cans elevated off bare concrete surfaces. Moisture migrates through concrete over time through capillary action and thermal cycling, accumulating at contact points and accelerating corrosion at the base of steel cans. Wooden pallets or basic shelving units in a cool, dry, and stable environment represent the correct storage protocol. Number 8. Salt no entry on this entire list costs less per unit. No entry delivers broader functional utility across more categories of need. A large container of salt can be acquired for somewhere between 75 cents and $2. Maintained in a dry, sealed state, its storage duration is functionally limitless. That intersection, negligible acquisition cost, and indefinite shelf permanence, produces the single highest efficiency ratio of any item covered here. But salt's role in an emergency context extends far beyond seasoning. Sodium is an essential electrolyte directly governing neural transmission, skeletal muscle contraction, fluid balance regulation, and cardiac rhythm stability. During sustained physical labor, elevated ambient temperatures, or any condition producing significant perspiration, sodium depletion accelerates rapidly. Left unaddressed, the consequences escalate from muscular cramping and cognitive fatigue to serious systemic dysfunction that compounds every other challenge the situation presents. Salt also represents one of humanity's oldest and most reliable preservation technologies. For thousands of years before mechanical refrigeration existed, salt was the primary means by which civilizations extended the consumable life of meat, fish, and vegetables across entire seasons. If electrical power fails and a freezer full of protein begins thawing, the capacity to salt cure, brine, or dry that food with salt can recover days or weeks of usable nutrition that would otherwise be lost entirely. Maintain 2 distinct varieties. Iodized table salt for daily dietary use, because iodine is a critical thyroid-supporting micronutrient that becomes extremely difficult to source from a simplified emergency diet. Coarse kosher or sea salt for preservation applications, since iodine additives can adversely affect the color, texture, and flavor profile of cured or brined foods during extended processing. Both types combined represent a total investment under $5. One behavioral observation that repeats with striking consistency in the 24 to 48 hours preceding every major forecasted weather event. Salt vanishes from grocery shelves alongside water and batteries. Not because any genuine scarcity exists, but because millions of households simultaneously reach for the same narrow list of essentials, and localized distribution infrastructure simply cannot absorb that concentrated surge in demand quickly enough. The correct time to acquire salt is during conditions of total normalcy, not after a forecast has triggered collective purchasing behavior. If this is resonating with you, consider subscribing to the channel so you do not miss the continuation of this series. A quick like and a comment about what you would add to this list helps enormously. Number 7. Canned meat 12 hours after electrical service fails. The refrigerator has transitioned from an asset into a liability. Every perishable item inside, the fresh chicken, the ground beef, the deli meats, the dairy, has been steadily warming toward the temperature danger zone where bacterial proliferation accelerates exponentially. What was yesterday a functioning cold chain is now a countdown to food waste, or worse, a food safety hazard. Meanwhile, sealed cans of protein sitting in a pantry shelf remain entirely unaffected. No electricity required, no cold chain dependency, no degradation timeline triggered by ambient temperature. That absolute independence from infrastructure is the foundational argument for canned meat, not palatability, not culinary appeal, but unconditional reliability regardless of what external systems have failed. Canned tuna, salmon, chicken, and processed shelf-stable meats deliver complete protein, the full spectrum of essential amino acids the human body cannot synthesize internally in a single, ready-to-eat serving. Complete protein is structurally irreplaceable for maintaining lean muscle tissue, supporting immune response, facilitating wound healing, and sustaining the prolonged sensation of fullness that keeps people functional and focused during extended periods of reduced caloric intake. One can of meat combined with cooked rice or beans transforms a simple carbohydrate base into a nutritionally complete meal. That specific pairing, starch plus complete animal protein, represents one of the most calorically efficient and nutritionally balanced combinations achievable within a shelf-stable food system. Most canned meats in the United States retail between $2 and $6 per unit and maintain reliable quality for 3 to 5 years under cool, dry, undisturbed storage conditions, frequently exceeding that window when seal integrity remains intact. One critical consideration that undermines many otherwise well-planned stockpiles: the majority of canned meats contain elevated sodium levels. During a scenario where clean drinking water is simultaneously constrained, high dietary sodium increases the body's hydration requirements at precisely the moment when fulfilling those requirements is most difficult. Mitigate this by diversifying across protein types. Tuna and salmon contribute omega-3 fatty acids. Chicken provides neutral culinary versatility. Processed meats offer maximum caloric density. Do not concentrate your entire protein reserve in a single variety. Number 6. Olive oil in the mental hierarchy most people follow when constructing an emergency food reserve. Dietary fat occupies the final position, if it is considered at all. Water comes first, then protein, then carbohydrates, and fat, if it appears, arrives as a vague afterthought. That sequencing creates a hidden nutritional deficit that the majority of stockpiles are carrying right now without their owners realizing it. Vitamins A, D, E, and K are classified as fat-soluble. The human body can only absorb and metabolize these micronutrients when adequate dietary fat is present in the same digestive cycle. A food supply heavily weighted toward canned vegetables, legumes, and grains, but deficient in a reliable fat source, will deliver only a fraction of the micronutrient value those foods theoretically contain. The nutritional information printed on the label describes the food's potential. What the body actually extracts depends entirely on what else accompanies it during digestion. Olive oil resolves this gap comprehensively without requiring refrigeration, specialized storage infrastructure, or complex handling protocols. Fat is also the most calorically dense macronutrient available for storage. Approximately 9 calories per gram, more than double the energy yield of equivalent weights of protein or carbohydrates. During periods of restricted food availability or elevated physical demand, that caloric concentration delivers meaningful impact. A single tablespoon stirred into cooked rice or legumes adds substantial caloric value without increasing meal volume or extending preparation time. Beyond its nutritional function, olive oil serves as a mechanical lubricant for tools and equipment, a topical skin protectant against dryness and cracking, and historically as a combustible fuel source for rudimentary oil lamps when electrical lighting infrastructure has failed entirely. A large bottle of extra virgin olive oil costs approximately $10 to $20 and holds optimal quality for 18 to 24 months. 3 environmental variables drive degradation, light exposure, thermal fluctuation, and oxygen contact. Store in dark glass containers, seal tightly between each use, and position in a cool area removed from direct sunlight. That constitutes the complete preservation protocol. The geopolitical dimension is also worth noting. Spain, Italy, and Greece, which collectively account for the dominant share of global olive oil production, have experienced successive seasons of extreme heat events and drought conditions. When harvests contract in those regions, worldwide supply tightens and retail pricing adjusts with minimal advance warning. These are not products that signal disruption far in advance. Number 5. Powdered milk. Consider the specific vulnerability this item addresses. A prolonged power failure has been underway for several hours. The refrigerator's internal temperature has climbed steadily past the safe holding threshold. A parent reaches for the milk, for a child's meal, for mixing into food, for basic nutritional continuity, and discovers there is none left and no possibility of acquiring more until stores reopen or power returns. The family's overall preparation was sound. This single specific gap was the failure point. Powdered milk eliminates that vulnerability entirely, and it is one of the very few shelf-stable products capable of doing so. When fresh dairy disappears from refrigerated access, whether through power loss, supply chain fracture, or physical inability to reach a retail outlet for an extended period, powdered milk reconstitutes into a functional dairy substitute using nothing more than potable water. A single package delivers protein, calcium, vitamin D, and vitamin B12. These are not peripheral nutrients during a period of dietary compression. Calcium is essential not only for skeletal integrity, but for muscular contraction, neural signal transmission, and cardiac rhythm regulation. Protein supports the preservation of lean body mass when meals become irregular or calorically insufficient. The practical applications extend well beyond direct consumption as a beverage. Incorporate it into oatmeal to substantially elevate the protein and caloric density of an otherwise simple grain meal. Use it as the base for pancake batter, reconstituted mashed potatoes, cream-style soups, or as an enrichment agent in bread dough. A single package reconstitutes into the volumetric equivalent of multiple gallons of milk, a significant nutritional output relative to the minimal physical storage space it occupies. Non-fat dry milk in the United States typically retails between $15 and $25 per package. Sealed inside Mylar bags with appropriately rated oxygen absorbers and stored in a cool, dark, dry environment, non-fat dry milk maintains its quality for 10 to 20 years, a preservation window that virtually no other dairy-adjacent product can approach. The single most consequential purchasing decision: select non-fat, not whole milk powder. Whole milk powder contains substantially higher fat content, and fat is the first macronutrient component to undergo oxidative degradation during extended storage. For any reserve intended to remain viable across a multi-year horizon, non-fat formulation is the only defensible choice. Once a sealed package is opened, immediately subdivide the contents into smaller Mylar pouches, insert fresh oxygen absorbers, seal each one individually, and store away from light and thermal exposure. The objective is to minimize the total volume of product exposed to atmospheric oxygen at any single point in time. Take a moment right now, hit like, leave a comment with the one item you are missing from your current setup, and subscribe if you have not already. That engagement directly determines whether content like this reaches the people who need it most. Number 4, flour. There exists a meaningful distinction between a household that accumulated food and a household that accumulated the capacity to produce food. Flour represents that distinction in its purest form. It is not a finished product. It is a raw capability. With flour, water, salt, and a minimal quantity of cooking fat, it becomes possible to produce flatbreads, tortillas, simple biscuits, dumplings, and fresh pasta using nothing more elaborate than a flat pan and a direct heat source. These are not supplementary items. They are complete, calorie-dense meals, and every one of them can be assembled in minutes using fundamental techniques that require no professional training and no equipment beyond what the average kitchen already contains. A 10-pound bag of all-purpose flour currently costs approximately $5 to $10 in the United States. That single bag yields dozens of individual meal portions, reducing the effective cost per serving to a level that no pre-packaged processed food alternative can approach. Sealed inside Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers and stored under cool, dry conditions. White all-purpose flour maintains its quality for 8 to 10 years, a genuinely extended preservation window for a fundamental baking staple. The most frequent error people make when selecting flour for long-term reserves is choosing whole wheat flour on the basis of its superior, everyday nutritional profile. Under normal circumstances, that reasoning is entirely sound. More fiber, more B vitamins, more mineral content. But the natural oils retained in the wheat bran layer cause whole wheat flour to undergo oxidative rancidity at a dramatically accelerated rate during storage. The nutritional advantage it offers under normal conditions disappears long before an 8-year storage window closes. White all-purpose flour, with the bran and germ removed during milling, is substantially more chemically stable across extended timeframes. One specific preparation step worth implementing before sealing flour into long-term storage packaging: place the commercially packaged bag in a household freezer for a minimum of 48 hours prior to repackaging. This cold treatment eliminates insect eggs, primarily those of flour beetles and Indian meal moths, that are commonly present in commercially milled flour and that survive standard ambient storage conditions. These eggs can hatch weeks or months into storage, contaminating an entire sealed container. A simple 48-hour freeze using equipment already present in the home eliminates that risk entirely. Number 3. Pasta. Every time a significant weather system is projected to impact a major metropolitan area, an identical pattern unfolds across grocery retailers. The bread aisle empties first. Water follows immediately. Canned goods begin thinning out. And somewhere in the middle of that collective purchasing surge, pasta shelves start clearing rapidly. Not because pasta is inherently scarce under normal conditions, but because it is one of the first foods people instinctively prioritize when their mental framework shifts from routine shopping to emergency provisioning. That collective instinct is well-founded, and the reasoning is specific. Dry pasta combines 3 attributes that very few other shelf-stable foods can simultaneously deliver: minimal cost, extended storage viability, and genuinely uncomplicated preparation. Boil water. Add pasta. Wait 8 to 12 minutes. The meal base is complete. Paired with canned tomatoes, it becomes a familiar Italian-style dish. Combined with canned beans, it becomes a hearty stew. Mixed with canned meat and olive oil, it becomes a calorically dense, protein-complete meal. Each combination produces a recognizably distinct eating experience from an identical foundational ingredient. That variety matters across an extended reliance period for the same fundamental reason canned tomatoes matter. Appetite fatigue is a documented, measurable behavioral response, and pasta provides a structural base versatile enough to be presented in numerous distinct configurations without adding complexity, cost, or resource dependency. Pasta also cooks substantially faster than most whole grains, a consideration that becomes operationally significant when fuel supplies are finite and must be conserved. The difference between 8 minutes and 45 minutes of sustained heat application is not a convenience distinction, it is a resource allocation decision with real consequences. Even the starchy cooking water that remains after draining pasta carries functional value. It can be incorporated directly into soups, used as a thickening agent for sauces, or repurposed as a base for subsequent cooking stages. Every component of every cooking session contributes utility. A 1-pound box of semolina pasta costs approximately $1 to $2. Transferred into mylar bags with oxygen absorbers and stored properly, pasta maintains its quality for 10 to 15 years. Left in the original cardboard packaging, that window contracts dramatically, and the contents become vulnerable to moisture infiltration, insect infestation, and rodent damage that a sealed mylar barrier prevents entirely. One variety to exclude from long-term reserves: egg noodles. The fat content contributed by the egg component accelerates oxidative degradation at a rate far exceeding that of pasta made from 100% semolina wheat. For anything intended to remain viable across years or decades of storage, semolina-only formulations are the sole appropriate choice. Bonus: oats. This entry does not appear in most standard emergency food lists, but its exclusion is difficult to justify on any nutritional or practical basis. Rolled oats, not instant, not steel-cut, but standard old-fashioned rolled oats, deliver a combination of complex carbohydrates, soluble fiber, and moderate protein at a cost that rivals white rice. A large canister costs $3 to $6 and provides dozens of servings. The preparation requirements are minimal: hot water and a few minutes of passive cooking, or in certain situations, oats can be consumed after cold soaking in water overnight. No heat source required at all. This makes oats one of the very few grain products that remain fully accessible even when fuel for cooking is entirely unavailable. The soluble fiber content, specifically beta-glucan, supports sustained energy release, promotes digestive regularity during periods of dietary disruption, and contributes to prolonged satiety between meals. Oats also serve as an exceptionally effective carrier for other items on this list. Stir in powdered milk for protein and calcium, add honey for immediate energy, fold in peanut butter for fat and caloric density. A single bowl becomes a nutritionally comprehensive meal assembled in minutes with no specialized equipment. Sealed in mylar, with oxygen absorbers and stored cool and dry, rolled oats maintain quality for 20 to 30 years, a preservation window that places them alongside white rice at the very top of the long-term grain storage hierarchy. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on. The next two entries are the most critical items on the entire list, and the reasoning behind their placement will reframe how you think about every other item covered so far. Number 2. Water. The most frequently cited principle in emergency preparedness literature is this: the human body can endure weeks without caloric intake, but will fail within days without adequate hydration. Most people have encountered that statement. Far fewer have translated it into concrete action, and the distance between intellectual awareness of the principle and physical implementation of the solution is where the majority of otherwise thoughtful preparedness efforts collapse silently. Water is not exclusively a hydration resource. It is the operational prerequisite for nearly everything else in this system. It is required to cook rice, boil pasta, reconstitute powdered milk, prepare oatmeal, clean wounds, maintain the basic sanitation standards that prevent illness during extended periods without normal infrastructure, and wash the containers and utensils that make repeated food preparation possible. Without adequate water reserves, a food stockpile valued at hundreds or thousands of dollars becomes functionally stranded. The rice cannot be cooked, the powdered milk cannot be mixed, the flour cannot become bread, the containers cannot be sanitized between uses. The food exists physically, but the capacity to convert it into consumable nutrition does not. Institutional emergency preparedness guidelines generally prescribe a minimum baseline of 1 gallon per person per day, covering fundamental drinking and cooking requirements. That figure increases meaningfully once sanitation, hygiene, medical needs, and comprehensive food preparation are incorporated into the calculation. For a family of 4 planning a 2-week reserve at even the minimum baseline consumption rate, the storage requirement exceeds 50 gallons. That volume does not accumulate incidentally. It demands purpose-built containers, a deliberate storage plan, and conscious ongoing maintenance. For serious multi-year storage, food-grade high-density polyethylene containers, identified by the Hay Deep Marking and Recycling Code, are substantially more appropriate than commercial single-use plastic bottles. Single-use bottles were neither designed nor tested for prolonged storage. The thin-gauge plastic can undergo photodegradation, chemical migration, and structural compromise in ways that purpose-engineered storage vessels are specifically formulated to resist. One storage protocol that applies universally: do not place water containers directly on bare concrete surfaces. Thermal differentials between concrete and ambient air cause condensation to accumulate at contact points over time, gradually compromising container integrity through mechanisms that remain invisible until failure occurs. Elevate all containers on shelving units or wooden pallets, the same principle that applies to every canned and packaged item on this list.